Here we have an old Pentium 4. Straight from the bowels of Dell. Look at all that dust. A lot of dust in here. Dust. Dust has even clogged up the audio jacks. Yuck. Now you might be wondering, what can be done with such an ancient piece of hardware? Well, I'll tell you. This old Pentium 4 machine is going to be used to make a digital art. Just to prove to the world that you don't need expensive stuff to make digital art. So after powering it on, the first thing I did was install Puppy Linux on it, because I wasn't going to try and use Windows XP or anything else. The main reason I chose Puppy Linux is because it's one of the lightest Linux distributions that I know of, and it's also very easy to install. So this is a 32-bit system, which is not something you see every day these days. It's about 17 years old. Comes with a Pentium 4, 2.8 GHz, 1.2 GB of RAM. Now, to show you how slow this computer is, I did something that everyone would use a computer for, just watch a YouTube video in high definition. It was not a good experience. It was very slow and jumpy, tons of drop frames. When the video was playing in HD, all the buttons in the web browser were almost unresponsive. But this was in HTML5, and this computer comes from the era of, what was it called again? Flash, or whatever. I dropped the video down to 360p, I think, and the video became more watchable. If it was in Flash, it probably would have been a lot smoother, but who uses that these days? So the cost of the system so far is cost me $0. Someone threw this machine away. So I've got a cheap graphics tablet, which I've had for the past 7 years or more. It's a Huion. And Huion makes graphic tablets and pen displays of all sorts these days. I bought this when they were a smaller and not as popular company. The only complaint I have about it is that it's a bit on the smooth side. It's like drawing on a sheet of glass or something. It's not very nice. I often tape a piece of paper onto it to give it more of a textured drawing experience. So I installed 3 drawing programs to play with. The first one I tried was MyPaint. It's an older version of MyPaint. I wanted to try out the latest version of MyPaint, but I couldn't find it compiled for a 32-bit system. So I gave up, and I stuck with version 1.2. I like MyPaint because it has a really cool infinite canvas feature. It lets you keep on drawing without ever coming up to the boundaries of the image, as the image just keeps on expanding to compensate. So I did a little drawing for 20 minutes. As you can see, the performance of MyPaint was quite usable on the Sol computer, after you get used to the amount of lag of the pen. Sometimes if you made really large changes with a really massive brush, it would lag to an unbearable level. But most of the time, I found it quite usable. Not enjoyable, as it always has a level of lag that I was slightly aware of. But I could see myself achieving things with it if that's all I had. Next I used GIMP. Everyone knows about GIMP, don't they? If you don't, you should. It's the most powerful free image manipulation tool. Now with GIMP, I went for a lower resolution image, 1600 by 1200, to try and get a smooth user experience out of it. And for whatever reason, I started drawing a thing, I don't know. After a little sketching, I quickly found GIMP to be unresponsive, because the computer had run out of RAM. But I had a web browser open in the background, so what do you expect? So I started up again, and after that I discovered that it was a really good experience. It behaved very well after I had enough RAM. For a short moment I forgot I was drawing on a 17-year-old computer. It was responsive, not lagging. In fact, I forgot what I was drawing at all. But what is that? Next I tried Critter. Now Critter is definitely my favourite drawing program. It has every feature I could ever want, and unlike GIMP, it is solely designed for drawing. While the interface of GIMP seems to be designed for photo editing and a bunch of other things. So I was going to tax this machine to the max with this program, and I gave it more of a professional resolution to chew on, which is a 2480 by 3508 image, 8.6 megapixels. I was going to draw a little comic about it with some kind of meta nonsense inside. In Critter, there didn't seem to be a lot of input lag, more like something like drop frames. It felt like 10 frames per second, like a cheap stop motion. And then it crashed. Something about OpenGL being too old and a segmentation fault. I'm getting sick of this.